Let's say you're like us. You like to drive hard and occasionally go sideways. You're not made of money and you can only afford to have one car. Well, you have three choices. Two of them are the same and the other one isn't really an option. So say hello to the new right choice, the Toyota GR86. This car has had more names than it has generations, so before we dive into what's going on under the skin, let's take a minute to talk about what this thing is and some of the heritage behind it. Now, the 86 designation at Toyota is legendary. The origin story for the 86 can be traced all the way back to 1965. Back then, though, it was called the Super 800 and, of course, the 2000 GT. The design was the same back then. It was front-midship engine with rear-wheel drive, but then, under the hood, was a 2-liter straight six. And just while we're talking about that 2000 GT, it is a fabulous thing to look at. Long hood, very, very E-Type Jag. Those GTs were only made between 67 and 70, and then they went away until 1983 when Toyota brought for the first time something with the true 86 designation, and that was the Corolla AE86. And those Corollas subscribe to the same recipe: engine at the front but behind the front axle, 3 pedals in the middle, and power goes out to the back tires. Only difference was that they could be had as either a 2-door coupe, pretty typical, or 3-door hatchback. These, though, were pretty short-lived. They only ran from 83 to 87, and then, you guessed it, another long break.
That was until January of 2012 when we got the modern era Scion FR-S, which ran for about 4 years until the Scion brand died out in 2016. But the car lived on and it basically shifted back under Toyota and it got its name back, 86. And that ran through the end of its life cycle in 2021. Now though, it's back with another new name, the same formula, but a lot more kick.
This is an entirely new generation of 86, and it's, again, wearing a new badge, which some of you may roll your eyes at, but it does still subscribe to the same recipe it always has. Affordable, rear-wheel drive, manual transmission, 2+2, giggle machine. And it's still developed with Subaru. But this time, they filled a big hole.
The hole that Matt is referring to is the torque hole that was literally right in the middle of your rev band. You had torque from about idle to 3,000 RPMs, and then again from 5,000 to 7,000 RPMs, but right in the middle, there was basically a loss of massive torque. And to make matters worse, you even had a digital display of your torque readout, so you could see this horror show unwinding right in front of your eyes. So what that essentially meant was you either had to baby this thing or drive the piss out of it to get any real performance out of the vehicle. Now though, I'm happy to confirm that they've fixed that issue in this new one. You have a bigger engine, more power, and a more linear curve.
A lot of people from last generation were asking for a turbo 86 or BRZ, but that adds weight, it adds complication, and worst of all, for something like this, clinging to the 30 grand mark, adds cost. Plus, if you want a turbo 86, they make a 2-liter Supra. Oh, but it's a BMW. Well, by that logic, this 86 is a Subaru. So, go have fun with the Miata that you can't fit anything in, and let's be honest, you'd be lucky if you fit yourself in it.
But let's dive underneath the skin and talk about the engine. So no longer do you have the 2-liter, it's been bored out to a 2.4-liter, and basically what that means is you get 25 more horsepower and 30 more pound-feet. So total power now comes in at 228 horsepower and 185 pound-feet. And that doesn't really sound like a huge number, but it's over 10% of an increase over the previous gen.
And you feel the difference in power. Another thing you feel is a connection to the driving experience. You've got a manual transmission here, and that's a huge part of it. And the nice thing here too is this thing doesn't have 1,000,000 horsepower, so the gears are spaced. They're not super tall, which means that you get to pay attention, you get to row through the gears, and isn't that the point of something like this? Full disclosure, this isn't necessarily my favorite gearbox, and I don't think it is with Paulo's either, but with all of the manuals dying, we can't really disparage something like this. Plus, I'm fairly certain that TRD has a short throw kit for something like this, and I think that would sort it out.
And speaking of sorted out, you have a real diff in the back. You have the Torsen LSD in the rear, making use of as much power as it can make. The other thing that helps you convert your power into speed is these fantastic Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires that you have. When you get this thing into a corner, it really gets stuck in. Honestly, I think Matt and I can both agree that this would probably be your best option to try and fine-tune your rear-wheel drive manual transmission driving techniques.
Yes, as a daily driver, this thing is a little bit compromised. It's pretty loud without sounding great, and the suspension is pretty stiff. However, if you're gonna get into autocross or starting to get into some track day stuff, you're gonna learn so much about advanced driving technique and how to drive behind the wheel of this car. The steering is incredibly communicative. I can tell exactly how much load the front tires can take. The Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires grip incredibly well, and I can tell if I can put more load and power through them or if I need to back off a little bit. The chassis has been revised. It's got 50% improved torsional rigidity and 60% improved bending rigidity. You have McPherson strut front suspension, so at the limit, they understeer just a touch, and then it transitions into oversteer, so it's a safe way to learn how to steer with the back of the car. It's a fantastic experience. The softer front McPherson suspension works really well in tandem with a stiffer multi-link rear, and what that results in is something that gets you really good front-end bite with a tiny bit of a safety net, and then with traction off, you can really start to dial in some throttle and learn how to safely and precisely steer with the back of the car. Or you can get around a corner another way. This thing is fun, man. It's not just fun to drive, it actually looks pretty good too. It's funny, when we went to swap the car this week, both of our girls were there and they thought it looked like Lightning McQueen with the red paint.
Yeah, the red paint definitely grew on me, I think, as we had it throughout the week.
Yeah.
And I think we both got Supra vibes because we had a red Supra earlier, and then there's also some design elements that kind of gave us that thought as well.
Yeah, especially in the running lights when we're shooting rollers and B-roll and I can see you like in the rear view mirror, like it looks like a baby Supra.
The rear hips.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the front, I do want to say that I think this is the better looking between the twins and the BRZ and the 86. The Grille is more aggressive to me, the whole front face.
Yeah, the Grille is absolutely massive, and obviously that's, you want a big grille to cool that engine. You have your GR badge there. You have these air inlets here to kind of go into the tire, and
so all of this stuff it's functional too. Like you've got the intake, you've got this air curtain that kind of brings air around the front tire, kind of relieving that high pressure zone. You've got a gill back here, again extracting that air, really efficient flow. You've got 18-inch wheels, the black painted, wrapped in the fantastic Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires.
They're awesome.
If you are going to track this thing or autocross, I would probably do brakes though. I would probably get race pads.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think from profile, this thing just gives race car vibes. The proportions are excellent.
Yes.
The rear hip it's not as exaggerated as a Supra was, but I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My favorite, speaking of the back, my favorite angle of this thing is straight on from the side with this massive exaggerated ducktail spoiler.
Yeah, I
awesome.
love the spoiler as well.
I love it. In the base car, you get a smaller spoiler, but in the premium, you get the big one, and I would definitely go for the premium.
Yeah, and then you have, a GR86 badge as well back here. You have your dual exhaust. It sounds kind of tinny. We both don't really love it.
Definitely a modder's car. Definitely exhaust, probably one of the first upgrades.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think also just quickly worth mentioning is that the hood, the roof, and then the front panels are all made of aluminum. So not only does that reduce your weight, but it also lowers your center of gravity.
Yeah, and also in tandem with that, like, it's all working together because you have a Boxer 4 under the hood here. So it's flatter and you can mount it lower than an inline four.
Yep.
So all of the center of gravity is really low, and that's why you get such good front end bite. But yeah, it's a really fun car to drive. Should we check out the inside?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
That's fine. Okay, it's definitely better in here. I mean, I think you're still reminded that it's clinging to the $30,000 mark.
Yeah.
But it looks great. We're in the GR86 Premium, so it's the higher of the two trims. This one comes in at around $31,000, and as tested, this one is just under 33.
Yeah, and I mean, from an interior perspective, it's not a huge departure. It's not unrecognizable from the previous generation, but there's definitely some improvements in here. My favorite is probably the 7-inch digital cluster that you get here. You get like a normal tack and everything, but then when you hold the track mode, or a track button with your stability control off, then it goes into like a graduating, ascending, different layout,
RPM
which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
I do wish that they kept the torque band though. It's kind of funny that they took that out.
They fixed the problem and then they removed it. They're like, we don't even want to talk about this ever again.
Yeah, and then in the center here you have a new 8-inch head unit with wired Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You have dual zone climate controls. I kind of like the red,
digital
LED
readout
that they have.
nice.
Yeah. You have some cool safety stuff like blind spot monitoring. It's kind of in an interesting spot.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like Audi. It's like the inside of your wing mirror.
I do kind of prefer when it's on the actual mirror, but that's
I mean,
preference.
overall, like the interior, the comfort is decent. Your seats are a mixture of like leather and Alcantara, and you have Alcantara like kind of on your door card above your cluster in here. It's nice. The seats themselves, they do squeeze my legs together a little bit, so I'm used to like man spreading when I drive, and I can't do that in here. But you do get 2 level heated seats, so like you get nice stuff in here for like 30 grand.
These don't get that warm though. I must be honest, they don't get that warm.
No.
And then speaking of seats, so you do have back seats, but not really. I mean, they're more so like shelves, more so for storage. Like I really don't think no one can fit comfortably back there. There's literally no room behind my seat.
Right, no, there are ISOFIX points, so you could put a baby back there, but that's it. That's
Track
basically
days.
it, yeah. But the nice thing about this, especially compared to its main rival being the Miata, is you do have back seats that, even if they're not used for humans, can be used for storage, and you can fold it down to get into your trunk.
Yeah, the trunk opening is small, but the volume is pretty good, and especially if you put the seats down, there's good volume there.
Yeah, it's a super usable package, and again, we keep going back to the price, but like being at 30 grand, like you get a lot of stuff. Now, of course, there are some evidence of chintzing, like with this aftermarket looking head unit that has like, I mean, it's fine. It does like 4 things, but it's the 4 things you want a sports car to do, so it's fine. The camera, for the reversing, it's fine.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not a 4Runner TRD
I'm
Sport
less offended than the.
But it's not Mazda 3 good.
No, yeah, absolutely. You do get a special, GR embossment on your shifter, which is kind of cool. But again, with everything in here, you're reminded of the mission of this car, and it's to be driven and driven hard.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not about the stereo or the lux or the features. It's about being driven.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect time to get into final thoughts.
Yes.
This new 86, when you think about it, is the culmination of a lot of little improvements that didn't really bring any downsides. And what that results in is something that ends up being noticeably and significantly better than the old car. The new car has a nicer interior. It's better to drive, it's better to look at, and more importantly, it can beat an ND2 in a drag race. We're hoping to get a chance to take this thing around Road America next month and put it up against the Elantra N. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.